guess we gotta get the whole thing.
Good morning, Mayor, members of council. We are now live streaming.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk, and welcome everyone and members of council to council meeting for Wednesday, September 23rd, 9:30 a.m. Electronic meeting pursuant to section 238, 3.3 of the Municipal Act of 2001. And as we know, the notice that we have is due to the efforts to contain the spread of COVID-19 and to protect all individuals. City facilities will not be open to the public to attend council meetings or committee meetings until a further notice. So with that, we will begin and we'll call a meeting to order, and would all please rise for the national anthem. Looking down at each other. Give me a tune-up. Excuse me. Public forum, we have no members of public for the public forum. Any council announcements at this time? Members of council? Council Sullivan, and then Council.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good morning, members of council and staff, and to all our residents who are tuning in. I just want to take this opportunity to wish all of our Jewish residents a very happy new year and well over the fast. From me, from all of us, to you and yours, Lashana Tova. Further, just one extra thing. I would like to extend my thanks to all staff who were involved in the installation of the 2 new crosswalks, one at Castle Rock and Mayvern, and the other one at Clarissa. This has taken years to come to fruition, and the residents are so happy with both crosswalks in those 2 locations in Ward 5. So on behalf of all the Ward 5 residents and all the residents of Richmond Hill, thank you so much to staff for the incredible amount of time and effort that it took with me and council and our residents to get this done over a period of many, many years. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor DePaula?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to take this opportunity to thank all those who helped with the 2nd annual Deputy Mayor Golf Classic. We had a tournament at Meadowbrook to raise money in support of Abuse Hurts, a charity here in York Region that helps women and children escaping from domestic violence. We had gross proceeds over $100,000. We're going to be making a large contribution to Abuse Hurts. And I also want to announce that we will be providing a second check donation to the York Region Food Bank. So it was a great day. We had great weather. I want to thank Dennis Flaherty and my team and all the work they did, the city staff, city event staff, and of course the volunteers from Abuse Hurts who were just fabulous in setting this up. Mr. Mayor, as you know, there are normally 10 or 20 golf events around the region, and I think we were the only ones that went ahead this year. We had a lot of trouble finding a golf course that was a willing host, but we complied with all the COVID protocols, and we were able to make it happen. So just congratulations all around for those involved. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I may.
Yes. Go ahead, Councilor.
Hey, good day, everyone. Congratulations, everyone. I just want to make a reminder to everybody that this is Cancer Month, and we have Ewing's Cancer here in Richmond Hill, who's made a big difference to Ewing's Cancer, and I'm a supporter of Ewing's Cancer. Sick Kids has taken over Ewing's Cancer last year, and all the research that's being done. And for the next 8 days, you can raise money. And I think it's important to mention that one of their key sponsors at Sick Kids is Stateview Homes, who does work in Richmond Hill. And anybody who makes a donation for the next 8 days, Stateview will double that donation across the spectrum. So I want to applaud Sick Kids for helping Ewing's Cancer and doing their foundation and their efforts, even during COVID. I want to thank everyone for their donations if they can try to give their support. And I really want to give a thank you to the key supporter for Stateview for what they're doing. And as they have a contribution to Richmond Hill, I think they should be given a shout out for that. So thanks.
Thank you. Good point. Okay, it seems to be the last.
Oh, Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Sure. So you just
Sorry.
got to wave in here. Okay.
No problem. I just wanted to also give a shout out to a number of residents that participated in the Monarch Butterfly Tagging Challenge that I hosted over the summer. The numbers are now coming in with the data pertaining to the tags that they've applied to butterflies over the summer. It looks like we'll probably be approaching our goal. And I did want to thank everybody for participating in that. The response was actually quite overwhelming, and there were a lot of people out there looking for caterpillars, raising them until they got to be butterflies, and then applying the tag. And all that information will be given to Monarch Watch, which is an organization that monitors the migration south to Mexico. And I would also say that thank you to staff for all the great work that they did, as well as the TRCA staff for Flight of the Monarch Day back on October the 22nd. By now, most of those monarch butterflies should probably be somewhere in the northern United States, making their way down to Mexico. So we wish them well, and thank you again to all of our residents who helped to do some citizen science to help their cause. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members? Seeing none. Thank you for those announcements. Introduction of emergency timer sensitive matters. Council, seeing none. Okay, we are about to adopt the agenda as we have it, and it's been revised. If you hope you've received that, could I have a mover and a seconder for the adoption of the agenda? Councillor Chan, Councillor DePaulo. All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you all very much. Disclosures of any pecuniary interest and general nature thereof of members of council. We are seeing none. Thank you. Okay, we'll move along. Our first item is adoption of previous council minutes. I'm going to ask that we, all three of them, 7.1, 7.2, and 7.3 area, be moved and seconded by the same members. I have Councillor Liu and Councillor West. And this is council meeting C-3520 of September 9th, 3620 of September 9th, and 3720 on September the 9th. Adoption of the minutes. All those in favor? Opposed? carries unanimously. Thank you. Identification of items to be separated for discussion. We do have, at this point in time, we have one delegation on proxy voting. Any others? Go ahead, Councilor Barrows.
I'd like to speak to item 13.14.
15.14, okay. Yes. Any others? Sorry, Castro?
13.2, please. Just fine.
I'm sorry,
13.2.
13, I was talking with you, over you, sorry.
13.2.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any others? Seeing none? Okay, if that's the case, we would then have items everyone's aware of, the ones that are not being dealt with. Is there any other? Make sure there's no other ones. So for, in turn, identification of all the items requiring separate discussion are now going to be adopted. We have a mover and seconder. Yes, we do. No, we don't. Okay. Councilors Paulo and Silovitz, all those in favor? Opposed? That carries. No public hearings. And now we come to presentations by our city manager, Marianne Dempster. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor. And I have Anthony Annucci here as well, who will be presenting the update to council. So good morning, members of council. Today's presentation by Anthony Annucci is an update on the transformational project being conducted across the organization with respect to staff accommodation and digitization. Mr. Annucci has been working with management across the city, reviewing our space requirements as we move to a remote workforce where possible. This is not a new concept, but the pandemic has forced this model and in most areas proven to be effective for a municipality. There will always be the front-facing services that require staff to facilitate, but there are a number of services that do not require staff full-time in the office. With respect to digitization, we are capitalizing on the technological infrastructure upgrades that has been implemented over the last few years to move to more of a digital model for our public-facing services by offering more choice to our residents through the website, as well as internally by providing software and infrastructure to be productive remotely. I will turn the presentation over to Mr. Annucci to provide the update. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of council. Next slide, please. So the transformation streams that we've been working on right now basically are looking at creating a key city services catalog, and that precipitates us going digital. And I talked a little bit more about that specifically, as well as Marianne has mentioned, the post-accommodation review. Next slide. So from the key city services catalog and digitization, we've been going through the organization and identifying a prioritized service inventory. Basically, there's lots of processes and services that across the organization that we use to deliver, not just deliver services externally, but also to actually fulfill. As we go through that inventory, we prioritize and develop process mapping. And the idea of digitizing a process that is kind of, let's say, broken or requires improvement really doesn't make sense. So we're developing some high-level process improvements and then looking at those as digitization opportunities. Once we've gone through those three processes, this again is working with the different lines of business. We move to design, develop, and deploy solutions from a digitization perspective, whether it be we're focusing on external right now, but also improving how work happens internally. Deploying solutions is really piggybacking on a lot of the work that we've done over the years in improving our back-end systems. This is an opportunity to reuse those systems and just continue to layer services on top of them where it makes sense.
as well as developing new things as required, but to a much lesser degree. Next slide, please. So some of the things that stand out in prioritizing those services are general inquiries, service requests, registration and programming improvements, permitting and licensing, property tax and utilities, and tickets collections. Some of the things that are really stand out as far as working through a process improvement and digitization. Some of these items are already out there in the public for sure. Next slide. So in going through and developing a service catalog, we found well over 400 sub-services have been identified, with 270 of them being citizen-centric. Basically, a request is coming in or it's precipitated by something that our residents or citizens have done. And those services are, the ones we're prioritizing. The ones we have that have the most value, the ones that happen most often, obviously, we want to make sure that we get the biggest bang for our buck. This is a process that's iterative and is going to continue for a long time, a new way of doing things. But some of the ones we've been walking through with the divisions, a lot of them in the parking area, permits, signs, licensing, as you can imagine, those are what generate a lot of the citizen-focused requests out there. Next slide, please. So this is just a representation of going through the process. So if you look on the left-hand side, you'll see that we have is a process map. So this one's specific to tow truck licensing. It's just a little excerpt example. You look on the left, it's who's all involved, what we call them the actors, if you will, and the different steps to fulfilling a request. Those are internal and external, focusing on the places where we can make a process improvement and then the opportunity to digitize. So it is it's a relatively long process because you don't want to just digitize a process that's not as effective as it can be. So working with the teams who deliver the services in first making some process improvements and then looking at the places where digitization can create the best value. Next slide. So the projects underway there's building permits has already been initially been released. We'll be adding online payment to most of these, which is something that is definitely needed. We're standardizing on ways to do online payments, so we're not having all kinds of different reconciliation efforts, et cetera. So we're looking at ways to standardize as much as possible. And there's 5 additional phases that'll be happening, some releasing this year, others releasing at the beginning of next year. Looking at things also, we're in the middle of waste and recycling, tree permits, marriage licenses, et cetera. And we'll keep adding to this list and releasing as soon as things are ready through a pretty much standardized platform. Next slide. So this is what's currently what it looks like for our residents. And we just keep adding to this same portal. So people can, it's a pretty standard tool set. Again, adding the component of being able to take payment is going to really improve how people can take advantage of this. And as I say, we'll continue to add to these opportunities as we walk through the process improvements. Next slide. So a little bit on the post-pandemic accommodations sort of status. So we've identified a floor and a half for lease. 7th floor has been vacated as far as staff is concerned. So it'll become part of an opportunity for lease. Planning on vacating the 5th floor is underway. The amount of people that are going to be moved has precipitated the need for us to be able to do a floor-by-floor review based on working remote and the opportunity of taking advantage of remote workforce. And that has definitely created opportunities for space. We just need to ensure that we've made provision for those who will be in the office as well as part-time when this pandemic is over, and also what the ground floor service area is going to look like. And we've engaged a broker to develop a marketing strategy for the parts of the building that we'll be able to vacate as a result of these changes. On top of that, we started looking at systems for space reservation. And what basically that means is for those who don't have or don't need a space in the office like yours truly, but do need to come in occasionally, if we run into a need to be able to require to reserve space, like a meeting room, like a place to put your computer down, for those who come more occasionally. We're looking at different options for that. Many organizations who have been using a remote workforce for years have these types of systems. We're not jumping on anything just yet, but we want to understand what's out there on the market and also understand as we start developing the need to go procure something if it's necessary, if it's something that's going to be required. Not sure we need it just yet. And next slide. And that's all for me.
All right. Thank you very much. Ms. Dempster, do you wish to comment, and then I'll ask for any questions that we have?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, but I can open up to questions.
All right. Councilor Barros.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to move the recommendation. I wanted to add to it that I am glad that staff have gone through this exercise. I'm glad that the previous council didn't go ahead with building a new city hall. We can see now the wisdom in that decision, in having this building that is paid for, that we now have additional space to potentially lease out. I trust that there will be someone that will see our location, young Highway 7 and 404. What a great location. So I think that our marketing for that location is fabulous. So City Manager, thank you very much for the work that I know you and your staff have been doing on this file. That's the motion, Mr. Mayor, as is on the screen.
Okay. Any other? We need a seconder first, please. Thank you. Councilor Chan, certainly. That's all right. Any other comments or questions or from members of council? Okay, we have mover and seconder. And then with that, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously from the hands I can see. Very good. Thank you. Sorry, did you get the motion? Okay, thank you. Sorry?
Delegation of Mr. Mayor.
Yes, we have a delegation. And I will ask Scott Thompson has applied to be for delegation for the proxy voting members of council item 1311. Mr. Thompson? There you are, sir. I see you. Go ahead, sir. We just got to get you on. Yeah, there you go.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank council for providing me with the opportunity to express my thoughts and concerns for council's consideration before rendering a decision on whether to move forward with proxy voting. I've read the staff report, including section 243.1 of the Municipal Act, and I concur with staff that at the very least, there are no current rules to adequately address the impacts that pecuniary interests discovered after the fact may have. The main concern being how such a scenario could call into question the legitimacy of the vote, along with any actions taken in response to the decision. I also concur that the measures already being put into place will allow council members to participate in meetings electronically even after COVID-19 restrictions are lifted, and therefore make proxy voting unnecessary. The staff report goes on to suggest that the logistics of implementing proxy voting could become a bit of an administrative nightmare for developing appropriate procedures due in part to the number of different scenarios that could be involved. And while I understand the impacts proxy voting may present to staff, I'm disappointed that staff has neglected to mention the impacts that this will have upon the public's ability to have their voices heard. As council members know, I was a member of the Committee of Adjustment for 4 years, where I never actually missed a meeting, I might add. And as you are aware, the Committee of Adjustment operates in a similar manner to council, where a member must adhere to the Conflict of Interest Act, will receive staff reports and recommendations, are obligated to objectively determine facts and draw conclusions in order to render a decision. And this all occurs in a forum where people have a right to be heard and have a fair opportunity to present their case whenever their interests might be adversely affected by a decision. So during my time on the Committee of Adjustment, I would not want to have been able to vote via proxy without actually hearing from those who presented at the meeting. I say this because there were several occasions where individuals presenting their case at the meeting convinced me that the well-being and interests of the public and the municipality would be better served by altering how I thought I might vote going into that meeting. As councillors, you were elected by your constituents to represent their views when dealing with issues that come before council. And where better for a constituent to express their views than at a council meeting where they can address all members at the same time. But allowing a member to vote by proxy would mean that the member renders their decision without ever hearing from the constituents presenting at the meeting. This to me is fundamentally wrong. I know that some council members may argue that constituents still have the opportunity to provide their views in writing in advance of a meeting, but in reality, you'll be forcing people to provide written submissions if you allow proxy voting, because they won't know who could be absent and plans on voting via proxy. And even then, a written submission will only provide a chance that the absent member will get to review their concerns before rendering a decision. And I say this because most people, when they provide a written submission, so just before the deadline. Part of the reason for the delay in submitting is the short time frame from when the staff reports become available to the general public and the deadline on when written submissions are required. Another issue with written submissions is that writing is not everyone's forte, where their written words may not necessarily get interpreted as intended. For example, I'm going to share something that some of you have probably seen many times before. And this, when you look at something like that, if it's not punctuated properly, a person may interpret it as a woman without her man is nothing. Whereas it may have been that it should have been interpreted as a woman without her man is nothing. So you can see the interpretation and what it means. I'll wrap up. I will wrap up, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. As this is where proxy voting becomes fundamentally wrong. This goes right back to my opening remarks, where I thank council for allowing me the opportunity, being able to attend a forum where councillors get to hear the inflection of one's voice so that there's no confusion and where their public interests lie. So opportunities for people to directly address council have already diminished in recent years with the move to daytime meetings.
Gotta wrap it.
Removal of committee adjustments. Thank you again for hearing me. Again, it goes against principles of natural justice to remove voices from.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your comments. All right, we have a mover and a seconder for staff report, please. Councilor West, Councillor Sullivan. Any other
Thank you,
comments?
Mr. Mayor. I'd be happy to move this. Interestingly, my first reaction to reading this report was that it's just not necessary to do proxy voting right now. I also agree with what staff has suggested as some of the logistical challenges and some of the conflict of interest challenges. But further to Mr. Thompson's presentation, he actually does also make another good point, a number of them. So I think this is a no-brainer. I don't think we should be doing proxy voting at this time. For all three of those groups of reasons, I just don't think it's a good decision. So I'm happy to go with the staff recommendation to just receive the report at this time. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Sullivan, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to Mr. Thompson for his comments. Thank you to staff for this. I'm in full agreement. I second what Councillor West said, and I want to thank Mr. Thompson for bringing those very important issues to the Zoom floor. He's absolutely right. When we have the ability to Zoom like we do now and possibly into the future, it does kind of negate the necessity for proxy voting. I do see a necessity for that at certain times, but because we have the Zoom, at least any member of council who is not able to attend a meeting will hopefully be able to attend via Zoom as we move into that to change procedural bylaw as well. So it's a difficult issue to go through. It's a difficult issue to discuss, but I think Mr. Thompson framed it well, as did Councillor West, and the staff report lays it out. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Barros.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think that the staff report is quite clear on this. Admittedly, I wasn't following a lot of what the delegate was saying, but I'm sure it made sense in some context. I don't think at this time this is something we need to consider, but perhaps as the pandemic goes on, given this is something the province has said is available to us, it may be something at a later time we may find the necessity to come back to. But I agree with the staff report. Just leave it alone at this point in time. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I don't see anybody else wishing to comment. Then all those in favor of staff report, opposed, that carries unanimously once again, as I see. Thank you. Next we go into the items 13.2, just to put in numeric order. Councillor Chet, you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to thank staff for the report and all the work they have done in throughout the time, and we did a lot of public consultation, open house, council public meeting, residents meeting, and I'm very happy with the report. And there are some residents' concerns, but I think the report addressed most of the concerns in terms of the cultural heritage, urban design, and so on and so on. Everything has been looked after, and I'm glad. Just one thing that I would like to just convey some concern of my residents across from the site, because it says the maximum height is 10 stories. I understand that it's consistent with the lands immediately to the south, which are designated employment area. But I just want to make a comment that 10-story might be a little bit high. But anyways, I'm sure staff and myself will work with whoever filing an application, and we can work that out. So I'm happy to move the recommendation. And once again, thank you for all the staff's effort in expediting this process.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Barros. Need a seconder here, if you will.
Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to second Councillor Liu's motion.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none. Move it seconder. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Thank you. All right, and our last item at this point is 13.4. Councilor Barros.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. We have a proposal in front of us that I have a few questions about. So the proposal in front of us is to upgrade some of the equipment in the council chambers to the tune of $160,000. So my first question is this coming out of money from COVID relief funds, or is this something that will come through our regular budget? Because are we doing this because of COVID, or is this something eventually we would have been doing to the systems?
Okay, who's responding?
Mr. Mayor, I can start the response, but I see we have Rob Jones and Paul Waddell on from Information Technology as well. The need for it now is directly related to COVID. So we believe it would comply with the guidelines around the funds we received and be able to fund from that source. So it will be funded from our operating funds and covered with the funds received from the province.
Councilor?
I was waiting for the second half of my question.
Okay, fair enough.
And I'll ask it again just in case. So the second half of my question was this technology something we had contemplated for a future upgrade, and we just didn't do it?
I'll have to turn that over to Rob Jones because he manages the capital long-term planning for information technology.
Thank you.
It was definitely on a 3 or 4 year roadmap. We've taken a more conservative approach to making the slow necessary upgrades to the technology. So it had been proposed a few years ago, but I don't think at the time it justified the cost. And now with changing times, COVID-19, and to support the physical distancing required for hybrid meetings, it is definitely there. So to answer the direct question, it is on a 3 or 4 year roadmap. And we had taken a phased approach based on the immediate needs.
Thank you. So, I mean, I see the need. I guess the other question I'm going to have is, if we say no, we would rather have you deploy that money in other areas of the municipality. What does the meeting look like? For example, a meeting ago, myself and Deputy Mayor Pirelli were in the chambers. We each had our devices and we shared one microphone. Would we just do a similar setup where, you know, instead of people being in their offices at home, they would bring their laptop to council chambers and there'd be a shared microphone in the room? If someone from IT could help me there.
Sure. So part of the interim proposal for now is an approach similar to that, where each member of council and participants would use technology, like their own laptop with a microphone and a Zoom browser. I'm not entirely sure on the logistics of that approach if you wanted to use a shared equipment, but to encourage the social and physical distancing, we would recommend the approach where each person uses their own piece of equipment, their own individual microphones, even with the speakers and accommodation lists.
Yeah, makes sense.
Okay, so I guess the only thing I struggle with then is $160,000. It seems like it was something that we were planning regardless. So it's not something that popped up just because of the particular desire for some members of the public to present in front of us, and for a number of members of council to actually be in the chambers. So I'm going to be moving the recommendation. If there's someone that would second it. Oh, I see I've got a seconder there in Deputy Mayor Pirelli. And I'm just curious if anyone has any other thoughts on it. Otherwise, Mr. Mayor, that's all I've got to say. We were proposing it before. If we've got money from the province to pay for it, all the better. We can move it along quickly and demonstrate to the public that we take their input in whichever way they feel most comfortable giving it to us. We can accommodate it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd be happy to ask a question just from a point of view. once we make the changes into the our room there and separate us up, it's going to prevent other things happening in there other than just our meetings in the same format of ours. As I see that actually today at LPAT, they're in two different places, and one is the meeting room that we have. So I'm just not sure. And can we keep everybody at to the 16th? The physical distancing, Carrie? It's, to me, yes. I've thought to myself, I'm sitting here. I'm actually here in the council or outside the council room, but I'm in the building because it's easier for me to manage as the chair of this meeting. So, but other than that, yes, I'm getting tired of sitting looking out the same window at home, for when we're doing our business in different ways all the time. So if the way it's set up, I don't know that we need to do this, but it was sometime based on my thoughts, it was going to be like this for a long time. So this thing would be active probably, I would say at least through 2021 anyway, and maybe beyond. So it may be worth the funding that we're going to get. Yes, won't impact us other than the fact we can't spend it anywhere else. So that's just my thought. If we're going to change all that, we should better change it up so that it will last us for our uses in a longer way.
It's a good question, Mr. Mayor. In the appendix provided to the staff report, it explains some of the technology for Committee Room 1 and Committee Room 2. So Mr. Jones, I'm sure, can elaborate in a more technical manner, but I believe that installing this technology is not only going to benefit us, it's also going to benefit LPAT. It's going to benefit any other of our users that are going to be using the committee rooms or the council chambers. Mr. Jones, am I on the right path on that?
That's correct, Councillor Barrow. So it gives us a lot of resiliency and options for social accommodation, distancing, various other uses in the committee rooms, as you mentioned. So it'll allow us, in the event that we do have a large amount of people in the room, we can spread them across the various rooms seamlessly. So that's one of the main advantages by extending pretty much full functionality into the council and committee rooms.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Questions?
Deputy Mayor Pirelli and Councillor West.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Go ahead, Councillor.
Did you want the councillor to go ahead or the deputy mayor?
Deputy Mayor.
Okay.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I'm happy to second this, Mr. Mayor, after having read the report. This is a win-win situation. As I've always stated, there's nothing more important than a resident's input when it comes to us making our decisions for the better of Richmond Hill. And any opportunity we can afford them to present to us, we should do so in person, through mail, email, and any other thing that we can think of. That being said, of course, we have to keep in mind the realities of today and respecting the social distancing. You had a very good point, Mr. Mayor, how are we going to keep people, 6 feet apart and so on and so forth. I think that's where the technology helps us to spread us all apart, but yet keep us all virtually together. I think, and that was well articulated by Councillor Barrows. So I'm happy to second the motion, Mr. Mayor, and look forward to the new technology and learning all about it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments?
Councillor West had a question.
Councillor West, yep.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with everything that's been set up to this point, and I won't reiterate all that. I would just add also that having read the addendum to this report and trying to imagine what some of the more technical aspects of what we're going to be getting in this package mean, I would also assume that the technology during but also after this pandemic has made its way through the system will also help to make the capability of streaming our meetings more understandable and logical to our residents. And I think that's also very important. So, I mean, this is an investment for today, but it is also an investment in our future. But I think the other thing too, I had said when we had first talked about doing this last meeting, was that, you know, I think it's very important that whatever technology we put in for today is the right technology to help us to adhere very closely to all of the physical distancing and all the other regulations that are out there. There's and it's not just council. I mean, it's if we're inviting our staff, which we always do, and if we're inviting the public, which we always do, into our space, we have better make sure that we are doing everything in our power to accommodate all of the best practices with regard to public health. And I believe that my concern in the last meeting is being addressed by this technology. We just need to make sure that with the technology, we also have our processes in place that are consistent with you know, all the safety measures. So I thank you for this. I thank staff for doing this. I know this is being done very quickly, but I think it is something that we are investing in the future of our democracy, frankly, and I think it's a good thing. So I thank you.
Thank you. Any other comment?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I think to Councillor West's comment, the public will enjoy the new view. They've become familiar now with each of us having our head in a screen, which they can see much more closely, which makes it more personal. The problem with our previous camera angle in the council chamber was you had one big wide angle of all of us. And envisioned in the new system is, you can see in the addendum, new cameras, which are linked to microphones. So when someone's microphone is speaking, that camera can then give a headshot of that particular speaker. So we're gonna have that more intimate feel with our residents, whether we're on Zoom or whether we're in the council chambers. So yeah, it'll be and you've all seen that before in other council chambers. I think the region utilizes a similar setup as the province and federal government does.
All right. If there's no other comments, then all those in favor? Opposed? It's carried unanimously as far as I can see.
Thank you, everyone.
Very much, everyone. All right. At this point in time, I guess we're finished. Bylaws?
That's correct, Mr. Mayor.
Because we're going to reopen special council for the closed session. So let us just finish this. Can I have a mover and a seconder for the bylaw? Councilor Silowitz, Councilor West. So the bylaws, 1, 2 bylaws. All those in favor? Opposed, carried. Thank you. Bylaw to confirm proceedings of council of this meeting. Councilor West, Councilor DePaul. All those in favor? Opposed, carried. The same mover and seconder for adjournment. All those in favor? Opposed,
Mr. Mayor,
yes.
Are we going in camera?
Yes, separate.
But it's not a separate meeting, is it?
Yes. Go ahead, Mr. Clerk. Hang on, just a second.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, in keeping with council's practice for closed session meetings during Zoom meetings, yes, once this meeting is adjourned, we will enter into a new Zoom meeting to conduct a special closed session meeting.
Very good.
So it's a new start with who's involved.
I apologize, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, I'm glad you asked, because that's how I found out too. All right, so we're just gonna do it right now. We just nobody's gonna move or leave.
Thank you. And no, through Mr. Mayor, well, actually, it'll be necessary for everyone to log off, and you have received a second invitation. So I'm assuming the motion to adjourn passed, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, it did.
Thank you.